Hello, this is Ruthie here. I want to tell you a story today about the 11-year-old girl that changed my family forever. That's right, and you know something? This story is a bit of a strange story because to this day no one in my family knows that girl's real name. We only know her by the name Fatty Parks, and that's a really horrible name, and I'll explain to you why she had this really horrible name. When my grandmother, this is my mum's mum, went to school, there was a girl who went to school who really believed in God, and she would get totally ridiculed and made fun of by the other kids in school who did not believe in God. This is how she ended up being called Fatty Parks, because they hated her so much they gave her this horrible, insulting name. And my grandmother came from a family that believed in God. Sort of. They thought that belief in God was very nice and it was part of belonging to that family, and religion was important, but they did not want to get connected. My grandmother was sent off regularly to be instructed in the family faith, but that's as far as it went. As far as connecting to God on a personal level, oh no, my great-grandma did not want a bar of that in the house. Anyway, this little girl would go around telling everyone how there's a God and he answers prayer and you have to get your life connected to him. And my grandma made fun of her as much as anybody else. Everyone made fun of this little 11-year-old girl. But this constant conviction on the half of this girl, who the family still to this day only knows as Fatty Parks, began to interest my grandmother. And in the end, she took her aside privately and she said, "What do you mean that you need to get your life connected to God? What do you mean by that?" And this little girl said, "Oh, well, come and talk to this lady I know. She'll explain it to you." So my grandmother went to see this lady, and the lady explained to her how the most important thing in life is to be connected to God, and you have to love God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul. And my grandmother had the spiritual lamp of her faith turned on. She became a completely different person. My great-grandmother was not thrilled. She thought that religion was fine and you should be religious because it makes you a good person. But as for all this talk about God living with you and speaking to you, she did not like that at all. In fact, she said to my grandmother, "My biggest fear is that you're going to keep believing this till you're an adult and all your descendants will become crazy about God and absolute fanatics." Well, my family doesn't consider itself to be fanatics, but I know some people might consider us to be fanatics because we do take God quite seriously. This little girl changed the future of my family because my grandmother thought that religion was just something you did because it's tradition, and it was something that was practiced in her family as tradition, but there was no connection to the living, breathing, real, true God. And because of this little 11-year-old, whose name we do not even know, my entire family has had a very, very different future. You see, this little girl convinced my grandmother that she needed to connect her life to God. My grandmother convinced my mother, and my mother has convinced me. And I'm hoping to convince you. And I hope when you are convinced that although we should never go around pushing our opinions down other people's throats, we need to be sensitive and kind and really try and respect and understand them. If you feel that a person needs to hear that there is a loving Creator who really can help and answer prayers, you should never be ashamed or afraid of passing that information on. And even if you get called a horrible name or made fun of, you should still have the courage to do it. If you feel like you're inside your soul, that little piece of God, and you are saying, this person needs to know about God, don't be ashamed and don't be afraid to tell them in a loving and considerate way, because that little 11-year-old, whose name we don't know, changed my family forever. And by the way, even though Fatty Parks is a really ugly name, to this day, the name Fatty Parks in my family, represents a holy, holy angel, because she changed the outcome of my family for good. And you may be the same thing. You may be a holy angel even as a little kid, and you may redirect the future of someone's entire family destiny. So do not be afraid to speak when God wants you to. Love you.